Now, JD, we turn our attention to a Newsmax exclusive with Lowry, the editor of the National Review and best-selling author of the book Lincoln Unbound. We covered a wide range of topics, including the re-emergence of Cold War-era U.S. officials to deal with the re-emergence of Russian aggression. We also talked about religious liberty in the case currently before the Supreme Court.
Clearly, these things really mean very little to this administration, or we wouldn't be embroiled in these controversies in the first place. And if you look at the Hobby Lobby case, part of the Hobby Lobby's argument is, why are you applying this mandate to us when we have a conscientious objection to some of these drugs, when you've waived all sorts of other people and grandfathered plans that don't have this requirement for tons of secular companies? So it makes no sense that you would so desperately want to apply the mandate to Hobby Lobby unless you're doing it on principle, unless you don't truly value people's religious motivation in the public sphere.
Now, the Pope seemed to listen to the president about the issues of poverty and things like that, but do you think he saw through that as well and kind of got the upper hand here on the president?
Well, I don't know whether it's that kind of meeting where one person is going to get the upper hand or not. Clearly, the message the administration wants out of it is all about income inequality, to boost that message, which is so important for him going into the midterm elections. They're hanging a lot of their case around that, and if you can get any boost at all to that agenda from a figure who has such authority,
yeah,
it's a benefit. But it was just inevitable that these issues of life and conscience were going to come up because they've been such a hot button in our national life the last 3 or 4 years.
And it really runs contrary to the narrative that Pope Francis is this progressive type of pope as well. He's really been consistent on the right to life. All right, let's move on a little bit. Newsmax chief Washington correspondent John Gizzi recently interviewed Josh Hawley, who is the counsel for the pro-religious freedom group Becket Fund, also the co-counsel for the Hobby Lobby chain here. He said that he was encouraged in the interview with Gizzi, Hawley did, about the tone of the questioning from the justices at the Supreme Court. Were you encouraged as well?
I was encouraged by the tone of the questioning, but I was also encouraged by the tone of the questioning over the big Obamacare case, over the constitutionality of the individual mandate, and we know how that turned out. So I think it's very difficult to read the tea leaves from this oral argument. I think that Hobby Lobby has a very strong case that the administration here has violated the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which says you can't substantially burden someone's religion unless there's a compelling governmental interest at stake, and unless there's no other less burdensome way to go about it. And that compelling governmental interest part of the test, well, if you're grandfathering other plans from this mandate, how compelling can your interest really be? And if what your end goal is to more widely spread contraception, there are other ways to do it rather than forcing employers that have a conscientious objection to go and pay for this stuff.
Now, the ruling's going to come out in March here, and then in the heat of the campaign season. If, as you mentioned, it can go either way at this point. If it does not go the way of the Hobby Lobby, is this more of a crushing defeat for these folks who are working for this religious liberty?
I don't know. I think it's hard to tell again, but it'll probably be a motivator because people really feel under threat. And the side that's generally winning in the culture war is the side that's not the aggressor.
Right.
And in this case, clearly, in the Hobby Lobby, just 3 or 4 years ago, they're just doing their business selling arts and crafts in a chain store. And they weren't bothering anyone at all. And then 3 years later, they're a scofflaw, just because they're operating the same way they were before, which shows that it's the left that's the aggressor in this instance.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about 2014. Everybody's asking about the Senate, and can the GOP regain control of the Senate in 2014? If we were betting on this right now, what kind of odds would you give me for a GOP takeover?
About even. I know that's a cop-out of an answer, but they need 6 seats, the Republicans, assuming they hold all their incumbents in the seats they already hold, which seems a pretty good assumption. There might be a few exceptions there, but that seems pretty safe. And then you can count to 3 or 4 pretty easily. Everyone seems to think they're going to get Montana, they're going to get South Dakota, they're going to get West Virginia, which are either open seats or have an appointed incumbent that hasn't been there long. Then to get to 6, you got to knock off some incumbents. And Mark Pryor in Arkansas is extremely vulnerable. I would say he's probably gone. That gets you to 4, and then you need to define the 2 someplace else. And there are plenty of possibilities. Kay Hagan in North Carolina is in a terrible shape. Mary Landrieu is under threat in Louisiana. Mark Begich in Alaska. but knocking off an incumbent is a really tough thing to do. And if you're going to do more than one or two, you need a little bit of a national wave to build. And I think you see that wave, but whether it's going to run building potentially, but whether it's going to run all the way through November, we don't know.
Do you think, collectively, the party, and I'm talking about everybody underneath the tent, will be happy with anything less than a Senate takeover?
It'll be pretty disappointing if the Republicans don't take the Senate. One, I think the expectations maybe have been too heightened, but the expectation has been that they will. And the stakes are so big, because if the Republicans take the Senate, it's effectively the end of the Obama administration. So that's a really, really big deal. And if Republicans fall a little short of that, it's going to be a tough one.
Well, JD, coming up in the next segment of that interview with Rich Lowry, we're going to talk about what the Republicans can do if that nightmare scenario presents itself and they don't win the Senate. But we kind of talked about that feeling the day after the midterms if the GOP doesn't take back the Senate, how deflating that's going to be for the legislative agenda.
Well, the real challenge in that circumstance would be not only the disappointment, but the fact that Harry Reid would maintain the schedule. Whomever the Senate majority leader is in that particular body controls the schedule. But again, understand this. The Senate is a small R Republican institution where the power of one still means a great deal in terms of the filibuster, despite some rule changes. Also coming up a little bit later, we're going to head to Boston and check in with radio talk show host and Herald columnist Howie Carr. There is more to come on America's Forum. Please stay with us.